Is the Soundcore Motion Boom the best budget Bluetooth speaker? Considering it's less than a third of the price of high-end boombox size speakers, how does it stack up against the competition? Well, we'll find out shortly. Soundcore kindly sent this in for a review, which is pretty nice of them considering I haven't always been the kindest to them in the past. Either way, you can expect my zero filter opinion as always, and I'll throw affiliate links to this beast in the description below so you can check their price in real time. Okay, let's get stuck in. Hey guys, it's Mark here, and I'm back to let you know what's worth buying before you buy it. But before we get into that, I just wanted to acknowledge one very important question that someone asked in the Amazon reviews for this product. Could you knock someone out with this? I plan on being alone in the woods most of the time. I'm only 4'8" and a bit slow. Well, stay tuned until the end and we'll find out. Until then, let's kick things off by rating the Motion Boom in terms of build and design. Once again, Soundcore proves that budget audio products don't need to make huge compromises when it comes to build quality and design. Okay, yeah, it's a plastic heavy build, which is absolutely fine at this price point, but it's actually that plastic build that deserves a lot of credit in explaining why the Motion Boom is so incredibly light compared to the competition. Weighing in at 1.5 kilograms, the Motion Boom is one of the lightest speakers of its size, being half a kilo lighter than the JBL Extreme 3 at 2 kilos and half the weight of the Sony XB43, which weighs in at a whopping 3 kilograms. Now, whilst there's no frills in terms of design aesthetically, as I'm sure you would agree, the design is actually painstakingly practical and built for purpose. The handle has a rubberized grip and it makes it much more convenient to carry with one hand, which I can't say for many other speakers of this size. Each end of the speaker has subtly raised feet, allowing it to stand vertically without any leaning Tower of Pisa effect, which makes it much sturdier in this position, especially on uneven surfaces outside. The rubberized feet on the bottom also offer great grip and ensure it remains standing even if knocked pretty hard, unlike the Extreme 3, which is just happy to roll over like a tortoise on its back. Okay, feet and a handle might not be the most exciting thing in the world, though it is practical, but we also have passive bass radiators on each end of the speaker, so you can literally see and feel that bass reverberating. We've got responsive LED button controls and a USB-C charging port hidden behind a watertight flap, along with a USB port that you can actually use to charge your smartphone, so yes, it even doubles up as a portable power bank too. Unfortunately, there's no auxiliary port here, which you can find in almost all other Bluetooth speakers of this size. We've got an IPX7 waterproof rating here, which is pretty common in most boombox speakers. That basically means it can be fully submerged a meter deep into water for up to 30 minutes. And yes, it actually floats in water too, which is always handy. However, an IPX7 rating means it has zero dust protection, so do bear that in mind. So although this is billed as an outdoor speaker, I think they even mentioned something about camping, you're realistically going to have to look towards more expensive players like the JBL Extreme 3, which is IP67 rated and completely dust tight. But even still, at this price, the build quality and design here is excellent and fit for purpose, so I'm going to drop an 8 out of 10 for round 1. Though I personally like the design, I've got to admit it's not the most exciting speaker aesthetically, and that's the main reason it didn't score higher. There's no other colorways other than black, and compared side by side to more expensive competitors, you could easily identify this as the budget option. Some dust protection would have been nice too, but overall, with price considered, we're getting insane value for money here already, and I'm already impressed. But what about battery life, I hear you ask? Well, we're getting a beastly 24 hours playback here, and actually, during my testing with bass up off, I achieved over 24 hours playback, which is easily enough longevity to beat the JBL Extreme 3's 15 hours of playback, and that costs, of course, triple the price. Now, I will always inevitably get that one comment saying, come on, 15 hours of playback is a lot, it's enough. Nobody needs to listen to music for 24 hours straight. But The ability to listen to music for an entire day in one listening session is not the point here at all. It's that you'll need to charge it far less often, and it's more likely to be ready to go when you need it most. There's also power saving features in the Soundcore app that allow you to set the speaker to auto power off after 5, 10, 30 and 60 minutes, which will also help to further preserve that battery life. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop a full 10 out of 10 here for battery life. It can actually exceed the 24-hour claims, which is pretty damn rare. It matches the twice the price Sony XB43's battery life, also 24 hours, and outdoes the JBL Extreme 3, all whilst having power saving options as well. So in round 3, I'm going to be rating the Motion Boom on usability and functionality. For starters, we've got Bluetooth 5.0 here, which is pretty much the standard for boombox Bluetooth speakers right now. It offers excellent range, and during my last couple of months of testing, I haven't had a connection drop once. But sadly, the Motion Boom only supports SBC codec here, which isn't great news for anyone looking to stream HD audio files, and certainly not great news when it comes to audiovisual lag. Especially when even Soundcore's own budget hero, the Motion Plus, has aptX, and the Sony XB43 and 33 both support LDAC as well. You can connect up to 2 Motion Booms in stereo mode using the TWS button on the speaker itself, which is a great feature, but when compared to the JBL Extreme 3 and Party Boost mode, where you can connect and sync multiple speakers and pump out the same track in different rooms, it suddenly doesn't seem so great. Again, this isn't really anything that I'm looking for personally, but it's definitely something you might reasonably expect from a Bluetooth boombox. However, you're not going to get that functionality here with the Motion Boom. Like most Bluetooth speakers, you can only connect one device to the Motion Boom at a time, though the Bluetooth button on the speaker itself does help make this a slightly easier process, despite still having to go onto your device and then reselect the Motion Boom in your Bluetooth settings every time you want to switch and then repair a new device. But of course, the Motion Boom makes up for all those shortcomings via Soundcore's companion app, namely through equalizer presets and custom equalizer settings. As you'll discover in the final round in just a sec, this added functionality makes a huge difference to sound quality, and yes, we are getting a full graphic equalizer, not a basic 3-band equalizer that you'll find with Sony Bluetooth speakers, or a complete lack of equalizer settings at all like you'll find with JBL speakers. You can also turn off the start up and power down noise, cryptically labelled as voice prompt in the app, something which I would highly recommend doing as the startup sound can become pretty annoying pretty damn fast. So I'm going to drop a fairly high 7 out of 10 for functionality and usability. aptX would have been the icing on the cake here. An auxiliary port would have been nice, as you'll find it on almost every Bluetooth speaker of this size, and the ability to connect more than 2 speakers together would have certainly been welcome, given that this is a boombox. But these won't be big deal breakers for everyone. It's the full graphic equalizer that wins all the points in this round for me, and JBL and Sony should definitely be taking notes here. But of course, the JBL Extreme 3 has a bottle opener on the strap, so that's an automatic win there, obviously. Oh, it's time for the deciding round, sound quality. But before we get into that, make sure you're following me on my personal Instagram and Twitter for a little taste of lockdown life here in the UK. Links are in the description for those. Make sure you're subscribed before you go and get lost in the wild YouTube algorithm, and let's dive into sound quality. Being totally honest, when I first switched this speaker on and I threw on a few tracks, I was pretty underwhelmed. Massively underwhelmed, actually. The default sound signature here is so incredibly flat, with 0 bass. What? And the mids and highs certainly didn't express any significant detail or fidelity. It was a very disappointing first listen. Immediately, my first instinct was obviously to hit the bass up button, and thankfully, things instantly improved a lot. Suddenly, deep, warm bass enveloped every track, which filled in a lot of gaps where mids and highs left a lot to be desired. This led me to discover that the bass up button isn't really a bass up button, it's more like a bass on or bass off button. And why would you ever want zero bass? So of course, given that this is supposed to be a boombox style speaker, I now keep bass up on permanently, and I'd recommend you to do the same too, unless of course you're using your own personal custom equalizer settings, which actually override the bass up function. So that fixed the lack of bass, which made those lackluster mids and highs sound way less exposed. But they still sounded a little bit underwhelming to my ears, and that's where custom equalizer settings, for me at least, become an absolute necessity. Now, just in case you were wondering, here's the settings that I use, which to me at least result in far more natural sounding vocals and high notes. I'm not saying that these settings will sound great to everyone across every genre, but certainly they make a huge difference as far as I'm concerned. But why take my word for it when you can just listen for yourself? So here's a little sound test of the Motion Boom with me sitting around 2 feet away from it at 40% volume. So get your own headphones on for the best experience, and let's take a listen. Okay, we're back, and as I'm sure you could hear, with bass up on, and then especially with my custom equalizer settings in play, the difference is like night and day, right? So I would definitely advise tweaking the custom equalizer settings to your own personal tastes as soon as you set this thing up. And after a couple of months of listening to this beast, let me just drop this bombshell first of all. The Motion Boom has some of the best low rumble I've ever heard in any Bluetooth speaker of any price, period. It's the kind of bass that you can feel reverberating through your body, especially at louder volumes, and honestly, nothing I've tested so far comes close. And unlike the competition, you don't lose any of that bass as you pump the volume up towards 100%, like with the Extreme 3, where bass plateaued at around 80%. But it has to be said, without tweeters, the Motion Boom still does struggle to capture detail in all those high notes, even with custom equalizer settings in play. Something which the smaller, older Motion Plus had no problems in achieving, albeit by sacrificing that deep bass to do so. But for the Motion Boom, that does mean that on tracks without much bass, such as acoustic tracks or movie soundtracks, mids and highs can sound a little bit underwhelming and thin, even when EQ'd. Because of that, EDM, rap and hip hop, not surprisingly, sound the strongest here, which, given that this is a boombox, I suppose makes total sense. To be honest here, soundstage isn't as wide as I'd like to hear, but given the price, it's not that surprising, though musical elements are still easy to pick out and offer a decent degree of separation, but overall, it is a slightly narrower sound. However, that is also something I could say for a lot of other boombox speakers I've tested, so I'm not going to be too critical here, especially considering the price point we're at. In terms of sheer volume though, the Motion Boom is one of the loudest speakers I've tested, even outdoing the Sony XB43, XB33, LG PN7X Boom and JBL Extreme 3, though not by a huge margin, it has to be said. The most important factor when it comes to volume, as I've already mentioned, is that as this thing goes seriously loud, it can do it without sacrificing bass at higher volumes, unlike many of the speakers I just mentioned. So, when it comes to sheer sound quality, it's going to be what feels like a rather generous 8 out of 10. In terms of stock sound signature, most other competitors blow the Motion Boom away, but with custom equalizer settings on or even just bass up enabled, the Motion Boom has far better deep bass than all of them hands down, and has no problems going toe to toe with a speaker that's either double or triple the price. But As much as I love deep bass and can appreciate this is a boombox first and foremost, so that's probably what it should prioritize, I still would have loved to see a little more fidelity on those mids and highs to make this a more rounded, more versatile speaker. So, what's my final score? Overall, the Soundcore Motion Boom scored a 33 out of a possible 40, which is a solid 8.2 out of 10. The pros are a great no-nonsense design that gets the job done, superb battery life, a full graphic equalizer in the Soundcore app, and the best deep bass in any Bluetooth speaker I've heard to date. The cons are, to some degree, it looks like a budget speaker, no aptX, you can't connect more than 2 speakers at once, no auxiliary port, and middling mids and highs. So, is it the best budget Bluetooth speaker? Well, it's one of the best. What it definitely is the best budget Bluetooth boombox. That was a lot of B's, but I managed it. And that's because it has the best deep bass I've ever heard at all price points. Of course, if you don't listen to a lot of bass heavy music, it's safe to say that you're probably better off with the Motion Plus, as you likely won't notice the deep bass you'll be losing, and realistically, you probably shouldn't be considering a boombox anyway. But the Motion Boom now makes it very hard for me to recommend the JBL Extreme 3, which, as I said, comes in at $350, unless you really, really want that dust protection, or you are made of money and you're going to buy 3 or more of them to connect in party boost mode, something which I'm definitely not planning on doing anytime soon. The lack of custom equalizer settings on the Extreme 3 also makes it less versatile compared to the Motion Boom, though it has to be said the stock sound signature on the Extreme 3 does sound better straight out of the box. You just won't be getting deep bass like you'll find here. But finally, to answer the question I asked at the start of the video, could you knock someone out with this if you were alone in the woods, 4'8" and a bit slow? Well, I'm sitting down now, which kind of makes me about 4'8", so you tell me.